Chinese hackers breached National Guard to steal network configuration. The Chinese state-sponsored hacking group known as Salt Typhoon, which we have read about quite extensively on these streams. I'm sure the name rings a bell. They've been behind very many attacks. Breached and remained undetected in a U.S. Army National Guard network for 9 months in 2024, stealing network configuration files and administrator credentials that could be used to compromise other government networks. You know what? I'm going to read it again because I really want this to land in your brains. I'm going to read it one more time. The Chinese state-sponsored hacking group known as Salt Typhoon breached and remained undetected in a U.S. Army National Guard network for 9 months in 2024, stealing network configuration files and administrator credentials that could be used to compromise other government. This group has been part of many other attacks. We've covered a lot of them here. AT&T, Verizon, Lumen, Charter, Windstream, Viasat. Some of them we haven't covered, but we know this name, Salt Typhoon. The goal of some of these attacks was to try to gain access to sensitive call logs, private communications, and law enforcement wiretap systems used by the U.S. government. So between March and December 2024, Salt Typhoon had access to the Army National Guard network. They stole the network diagrams, configuration files, administrator credentials, and personal information of service members. They collected data traffic with its counterpart networks in every other U.S. state and at least 4 U.S. territories. I'm going to read this again. They collected network configuration and data traffic with counterpart U.S. Army National Guard networks in every other U.S. state and at least 4 U.S. territories. The memo released by the Department of Defense states that Salt Typhoon had previously utilized stolen network topologies and configuration files to compromise critical infrastructure and U.S. government agencies. Salt Typhoon has previously used exfiltrated network config files to enable cyber intrusions elsewhere. It doesn't end there. Between January and March, so you have to remember that this is March and December that the National Guard was infiltrated undetected. So between January and March, which is the lead up to this, Salt Typhoon exfiltrated configuration files associated with other U.S. government and critical infrastructure entities, including at least 2 U.S. state government agencies. At least one of these files later informed their compromise of a vulnerable device on another U.S. government agency's network. What do network configuration files typically include? As programmers, sysadmin people, DevOps, I'm sure you know, but it can include all kinds of things, including security profiles, routers, firewalls, VPNs, etc., etc. And essentially, it just gives you a map. Think about it as a pretty detailed map of the lay of the land, so to speak, which gives you the ability to determine which portions of land in front of you are good for attack vectors. The Department of Homeland and Security, I think that's what it is, warns that between 2023 and 2024, Salt Typhoon stole 1,462 network configuration files associated with approximately 70 U.S. government and critical infrastructure entities from 12 sectors. You know, the beautiful part is that Salt Typhoon does not actually need to use this data to breach anything. All that Salt Typhoon has to do here is sell this data, and you can think of people like, I don't know, the Taliban, who would love to have their hands on this data. It is not disclosed how the breach happened, but given track records of how they operate, they use vulnerable devices such as Cisco route. They also provided IP addresses that you should be careful of. Salt Typhoon used these IP addresses as part of their attack vector. And then they talk about previous things that that this group has done and things that people need to do in order to mitigate the attack. Go back to pen and paper. Yeah. Do I really need to talk, very much about the consequences of this? And look, you can read between the lines, right? Not only did this group stay undetected for 9 months, but they used previous infiltration techniques and jumped forward and like used it as a jumping ground to move to the next step. And it's currently unknown whether they're in other systems. That's what you read between the lines here. They don't actually know how deeply they've infiltrated the US government. We're just going to say it. It's just the US government. Military agencies, secret agencies, who the heck knows? How do you know? Again, you have to be naive, ignorant, outright stupid, some mixture of the above, or all of the above, to tell me that security is not a massively important factor in the digital world. And this article outlines how something simple like a website with cat pictures can be used as a jumping off point to bigger and bigger targets. If one of these government officials really likes cat pictures and you find them in a database that has no encryption or password protection or security of any kind, because you just grabbed a database of users from a cat picture website and one of them happened to be one of these government officials, boom. That's it. It's over. Because now you have a mechanism to take a completely innocuous website. It's just cat pictures, bro. And you can use that to continually get bigger and bigger targets, just like the Salt Typhoon group did. And now we have no idea how much of the US government is infiltrated by this group. All we know is that they were in the National Guard army systems for 9 months undetected, and they have all kinds of information on related agencies. And this is just that one thing. We know that they were in the US government systems even before this.